Hi, I'm Terry O'Reilly, founder of OBP Australia, a service for overseas-born professionals looking to either get their first job in Australia or advance their career once they're established in their profession. Welcome to the podcast. Each episode, I'll be talking to an ex-OBP Australia client who's been successful in finding employment in Australia. We'll get to hear about their journey and what advice they have for job seekers. Anish is a construction management professional and civil engineer with 4 years of field experience in civil and construction projects, including significant work with large-scale highway construction entities. His expertise is in project management, specialising in supply chain management, risk management and stakeholder engagement. Anish, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining me here today. We go back a little way. I've known you for a little while now. What I'd like to do is break this conversation up into two sections. One is a little bit about your personal experience through immigration, and secondly, we can talk a little bit about the work you do. How does that sound?
Yeah, looks good. Looks good.
Excellent. So why don't we just start off by telling us all, when did you come to Australia?
So I came back in July 2022, and it was just when the COVID lockdowns started opening in Adelaide. So I was pretty lucky regarding that thing. So yeah.
Yeah, so I've had clients who came at 2020, which was, completely disastrous for for most people, but for trying to find work, you caught just the end of the tail there, so that was great. What did you know about Australia before you came?
So I was just, there was no plan to come to Australia, to be honest. I applied to a few countries, starting with the most obvious choice being US. But then, apart from just considering the factors of study, I was also considering the work-life balance aspect, and that deviated me towards Europe. And then when I was going through all those countries, and suddenly, because I was having a very, inclination towards cricket, and then suddenly there was this match which was happening between Australia and England. And then suddenly it struck me, why I'm not trying Australia or New Zealand for that chance. And then I'm like, okay, if I gonna go to those two countries which are a bit isolated, then I'll start with the lowest one. So New Zealand came to be the first choice. And back in 2020, just before COVID, I just started applying for my master courses, and found that my course, construction management, is being offered by a good ranked university, which was University of Auckland. And I got the offer as well during the COVID itself, but it seemed like they never opened, to be honest, till 2023, starting of 2023. And that pushed me, just like my patience barrier. And I had to see one of the options in 2022 only. And luckily at that time, Australia started opening. And then I'm like considering options in New Zealand and Australia. Opportunities seem to be more in Australia. And then I cut down my options to just Australia being the prominent one. And then I saw, I think my degree was just offered in two universities at that time, two or three universities. So one was in Sydney, one in Melbourne, and I think one in Adelaide. And seeing it as a group of 8 uni, sitting from, back of the comfort of my home, it seemed like a good option to go with. So yeah, I mean, that's how then, I landed up in Adelaide.
Interesting. So not by plan necessarily, but that's the way things turned out. So that
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I thought it was a sort of a direct hit Australia, but that's yeah interesting that cricket is a bit of a cultural tie as well.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah. And Adelaide was your preference, is that correct?
So Adelaide became my preference when, due to some not visa, I would say, there the course which was offered in University of New South Wales was, at that time, it was 1.4 years, and to get a post study work visa, like after our masters get finished, to work here, the study needs to be minimum of 1.6 years. So then I thought there's no point of doing that much of course and not being able to work after that. So then the option of going to Sydney got removed, and then it was just Melbourne and Adelaide. And then, considering I myself come from a suburban town in India, I always wish to go to a place where there are less people, to be honest. So
Yeah, that's
so
a good reason to choose. So how most people are probably more familiar with Sydney and Melbourne as destinations. How would you describe Adelaide in comparison to a bigger city?
um So Adelaide, once you hit the ground on Adelaide, it's completely different from Melbourne and Sydney in terms of scale, definitely, which is visible once you leave the airport. And then it goes with those basic things, like when I started my studentship, the first thing which came up was the uh, closing of shops around 6 p.m. in the evening, and that was a bit weird to me. And I'm like that, and considering in Melbourne, Sydney, there are still shops which remains open, till night. And so that turned out to be pretty challenging in that time, and very different from bigger cities like Sydney, Melbourne. And Adelaide seems to have that suburban feel, the city which I come from. So there is a bit of connection between my city in India and Adelaide. So my city back in India, is its name is Chandigarh, and it's the first planned city of India. So which was designed by a French architect, and the French architect named Le Corbusier used the Adelaide plans to plan my city. So
Wow, that's interesting.
yeah, and when before coming, I was just giving a quick read about Adelaide in general, and how what is the basic connection, considering I come from construction and civil engineering field. It was really interesting for me to just have those insights. And I back in my after my year 12, I also happened to studied like 4 or 3 months of architecture course. So that also just had like gave me a bit of push towards knowing about the architecture of the city. And once I came to know about it, it was really, it was basically connecting me to the city. So
Yeah, like a second home almost.
exactly,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So a lot of people are a little bit apprehensive about making the big move to another country and all the things you have to do as part of settlement.
Yeah.
How did you, for example, organize your initial accommodation?
So for me, what the strategy I chose was just to connect before going to any country. Even in my city, what I used to do is, whenever I used to change states, I used to come in contact with people who are already staying there or working there, you know even 2 3 months before or 4 months before, just to get a feel of knowing what to expect and what not. So what I did is, here, once, even before getting my visa sorted, I had started connecting to the people who were in Adelaide, who did my course from the uni, or some of the alumni who were finding jobs or who were already in the industry. And like I reached out to everyone, but only, one or two people who really gave a good response. And through them, I got to know that it will be really good if I just land up in a uni accommodation itself.
So,
And
so these are people that you didn't necessarily know, but they were part of the alumni. Is that right?
sorry, can you repeat?
They're people that you didn't necessarily already know, but they were part of the university alumni. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. So to be honest, I didn't know anyone here, and all my connections, even till today, you would say my best mates or my other mates were all from purely internet, like from LinkedIn platform or from other social media platforms. So I started doing this activity even before I came in, and that gave me a bit of more advantage in terms of sorting out my accommodation. So I organized, even coming before 3 months before I hit Adelaide, my accommodation was sorted in the
Right.
unit itself. Yeah,
That's very, very organized.
thank you.
So yeah, making it a little bit less stressful, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. And how would you describe the cost of living here?
At that time, because I was staying in the accommodation, it was still, after post-COVID era, the rates went really crazy. And it was even, when I say that I always used to do an advanced search about, moving cities, I think currently in Adelaide and even during that time, it is and it was really necessary that you start finding and searching your places 3 months or 4 months prior. Even just connecting with people, because sometimes people you might find people who are really in the exact need what you want, and you can just have a chat with them, and then you might land up straight away. So just having more time, I would say, can make a real difference here.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So moving beyond the study, did you do any research before you came on how to find a job in Australia?
um to be honest, no, because I wasn't having that much of time. But and unless what I have realized is, unless you breathe the Australian air by yourself, you cannot predict what's going to happen with you, because it's not about just having those technical skills, or those technicalities to express, but it's also about how you are able to communicate to them. Because if even if even if you have 15 years of experience, 20 years of experience, I have seen people who have born in Adelaide, having worked like 10 or 15 years, and then moving to London in the headquarters, and then they came back after 10 or 20 years, just to again return to their roots, and they couldn't able to find the job. And I was honestly confused, like, what's happening? I mean, these people even know how to communicate. They have been born and brought up here, and they just went for some time, which is acceptable for anyone. But how they are not able to fit in, or how they are not able to get in the industry where they want. And then I got to know that the thing about having local experience, sort of those things, which can only be prepared if you meet a right individual in Adelaide before coming. And I couldn't able to get to know those people who could have told me earlier that you need to uh, have those have that local experience thing with you. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting way and a nice way of putting it about breathing the air because it is very different when you're here and things can change pretty quickly as well. So, and the more people you meet, as you said, the better chance there is of making a connection. So how long did it take you to find work once you started actively seeking?
So I would say I started actively seeking from my day one itself. The moment I came here, the first thing I wanted to do is to connect to one of the communities which I was following back from India. So it was Toastmasters fraternity. So it's a public speaking platform you must be knowing from started back in US, and I just joined that community back in India, 2 years back, uh, like in 2020. And then I started doing those things to improve my confidence, work on that. And then I got to know that these things these this club itself is having chapters all over the world. And let's say if you're a member, then you can, if you're in a new city, you can directly go to the club, introduce yourself, meet new people, and that can be the best way to just break the ice in the city, in a new city, in a new country. So I think I still remember on my day three, I attended my first Toastmasters meeting, which was I think 7th of July 2022. I came on 5th morning, and yeah, and I still remember the the person who was heading that meeting. He just in a very I would say thick Australian accent, he just asked me to make a coffee. And I'm like, man, I haven't even seen this coffee machine in my life, and telling me to make one. And I was really shaking. And after 2 minutes, he just saw me that I'm trying to just find out and pretend that I will be able to make it, but he knew that I won't. And then he just came in, and then he broke the ice, and then he made me learn. And but at that time I was so much new. I was just trying to adjust my mind. And yeah, so cut down short to your answer, uh, joining that community in my initial days just helped me, just starting with that process of networking. Because coming to Australia and just right away finding a job will be, I think if you're really lucky, then it can happen. But if you're not, then it has been a struggle. And I used to even here in one of the newspapers, still remember in Sydney Morning Herald, there was a news where they surveyed, after taking a good amount of interviews from students, that on average, it is taking at least 8 to 10 months for a student to find a job after their master's or bachelor's. So,
Right.
yeah, it was pretty tough. But yeah, this way I was able to navigate it.
Great. Toastmasters is very popular, and I think one of the other good things about it is it forces you just to get out and speak.
Yeah.
So a lot of people stay home, they go to university, they come home, they look for jobs on LinkedIn or Seek or Indeed or other platforms, but that social engagement is missing for some people. So if you can force yourself, even if people are shy or whatever, or not comfortable meeting new people. It's a great way, supportive way to get a chance to speak, I guess. How many would have been at the Toastmasters events? Is it a small group or is it a large group, would you say?
So I went to different chapters as well. So in one of the chapters, there must be, 7 or 8 people, but in other chapter, I found it like quite engaging with 20, 25 people.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
depends on the chapter and location. Yeah.
Yep. And for your profession, how many interviews did you have before landing your first professional job in Australia?
So I believe I gave only one interview, one full-time interview, and one casual interview, which happened during my uni itself. And before that, before that, it's just I was uh, going into the networking events, and then I just being in my being in my first, I think, second networking event. I met a managing director of a company, and I didn't know at that time. I just went on and I introduced myself, and that's it. I reconnected with him, and then in my second semester itself, he offered me a job as a casual role, and I utilized it as my internship in the uni itself. So I think that gave me a bit of a start, but that happened when I pushed myself to go to that event and just say hello, to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't put that much of effort, or I cleared an exam, or I would say I did this or that. No, I didn't do anything. I just introduced myself. So yeah.
Hmm. So one or two interviews is impressive. I mean, it can take people many, many interviews before they land the job, and an interview can be quite a daunting prospect as well. What advice do you have for somebody who's about to attend an interview as an engineer?
So that's a good question, because it's I always used to research about this answer whenever I was finding the job in my technical sector. I would say, and it is very interesting for me, because uh, when I used to work in my part-time jobs, which was not in my field, every person, or most of the person in those jobs, or doing those jobs, used to tell me, or I used to see that uh, insatisfaction on their faces while doing it, and that used to make me wonder. I'm like, why are they not happy about it? I'm like, yes, everyone needs to go through that phase where you're not getting what you really want, but after all, it's a phase which always going to end. But why there is insatisfaction? And then I used to hear a lot of things about survival jobs, or those sort of things, or uh, odd jobs. I mean, survival jobs, the name was still fine to me, it went inside, but I couldn't able to absorb when they say it odd. I'm like, these odd jobs are trying to give you the exposure which will allow you to go into the industry. And how can you you know do this unjustifiable thing to just call it an odd? So I worked in 3 or 4 part-time jobs, and honestly, I considered, when I was working there, I considered every interaction with the person who was involved in during my shifts. I considered that as an interview. So when I said that I just gave one interview, I can, say that that's not a, really correct statement. I have given thousands of interviews by just introducing myself 1,000 times on my shifts, on my jobs, wherever I have worked, and I have tried myself to push my comfort zone by taking more shifts which challenged me. So in one of the jobs, I was working as a sales executive, which I really hated. But that particular aspect about asking people, whoever was visiting the store, just asking about their day, asking about their needs, cutting short to what they actually need, was a skill, to be honest. And it's a skill, and uh, it is very hard for some people to just interact itself. And I used to be the one. It's just I cannot used to strike small conversations, or uh, I still remember when I was on the till, and it was my first transaction. My manager was just sitting right behind the customer, seeing my reaction, how will I react. And I was completely sweating at that moment. With one hand, I was clearing my sweat with my handkerchief, and the other one, I was doing the transaction, and it was taking me 5 or 10 minutes, honestly, which was just a 1 minute task. And meanwhile, I applied the steps which my manager told me, that, Anish, whenever it's taking a bit longer for you, then just to break the ice, and, just to make yourself comfortable, just start asking the customer, how is it, how are they, how's how is their day going, um, where they come from, or, just have that thing. And at that time, coming from a culture back in India, which is very, you know, while doing this thing, we are very to the point. We don't, ask, we don't have these short talks and anything. But here it's completely different. So I pushed myself and just, started asking about his, and that 10 minutes felt like, to be honest, 2 minutes,
Right.
because then I became comfortable and it went so smoothly. And so, to cut short on my answer, I would say, don't just get behind the, behind studying for the interviews and everything. Do whatever you're doing, your part-time job, in a very dedicated manner. If Especially if you are having a customer oriented role, customer facing role, so that will just, improve your speaking skills like anything.
Yeah, that's really good advice because ultimately a job interview is just about good communication, and anything you can do to improve that is, going to help. And just for listeners, when we refer to a survival job or an odd job, we're referring to jobs that people do for money that's outside their profession,
Yeah,
just as a way of getting by. And it's great that you were able to take lessons from that and also approach something that, that you didn't like, but also try and take positives from that experience as well. I think is a really important lesson people can learn from.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking about what it was like when you first arrived in Australia, you mentioned there that in India, people are more direct, there's less small talk, perhaps. Was there
Yeah.
anything else about the culture that struck you when you arrived in Australia that you found was different from what you had previously experienced in India?
So when I came here, I started researching a bit about, how to get in the construction industry, of course. And then I got to know that in construction you need a construction white card. So even before my uni itself, I, enrolled in the course. And then, so that course provided me a first time the class exposure in Australia, where I was sitting with fellow Australians, and then with an Australian teacher was, teaching the whole course, which took 5 or 6 hours. And that, completely changed what I was thinking about Australia, and how, a class culture in Australia and in India is. Because here, what really, the major difference, what I found is, uh, let's say, if you are a teacher, you have taught me a concept about any sort of, and you have taught me a meaning of a terminology or anything. Then back in India, we will be we used to just accept it, and then mostly, like, there will be some different people who might question it, but most of us used to say yes, and then we go ahead, and then another one, and then another one, so it goes like that. But here, there was he this person told us about, certain aspect in construction, and then suddenly they started a discussion. Every other person started putting up question: can it happen like this? Can it happen like that? Can it happen? Can it be? This is a possibility. Is that a possibility? And I'm like, aren't we wasting a lot of time in just, asking questions, and can we just go ahead? I was just thinking in my mind, consider coming back from a different way of, studying and doing things in the class. And but after, when we finished that 6 hours of course, I was having more sort of, a lot of the inherent questions cleared. And that just made me realize that, it's such a beautiful thing. If what if because whenever you're in a class you always get so many questions, how this is being done, where this thing came from, how it would have originated, so many questions. And the best way to just uh, get everything out of the other person's mind is ask questions.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it. And that I would say that Australian spirit is lies in asking questions and be curious. So
Right.
yeah.
So that experience of having a very teacher-directed classroom, does that apply in the workplace as well? I mean, do you find that in Australia managers are a little bit different to what they would be in India?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Um, so what happened is when I started working here and when I was working back in India, so I worked in India both in the federal government and the private sector. So I have a bit of mix of both exposures back in India, mix of both worlds. And here, when I started here, then the manager, let's say, if a manager back in India used to explain me anything and I haven't understood it, right? So what I used to, my initial reaction wouldn't used to be like, no, I didn't understand. I just used to remain silent. And suddenly my manager used to understand that, okay, Anish might not have understand. I will try it again and I'll give it another chance and then we'll see how it goes. But here, when I didn't say anything, they just moved on,
Right.
thinking that, the person has absolutely understood. He's not having any questions. If he hasn't spoken anything, that means he has absolutely got the point. But that was not the case. So that became the difference.
So you've discovered that it's okay here to say, yeah, I don't quite get that, or can you explain, or what do you mean by? So you keep prompting the manager with further detail, is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, back in India also you can say, and it is always a good and encouraging thing if you do that. But it's just I wasn't that person who used to keep on questioning and poking until I get the point. I
Hmm.
was not that person. I just used to be a silent person. If he gets it, he gets it. If he doesn't, then somehow in the universe he will be able to get answers at some point. But no, I used to be a shy person in that. And but when I used to work hard when it comes to that I had to deliver something, then I used to question. But not until if I'm in my comfort zone and I really don't have to get that question answered, then I won't used to go out of my comfort zone to get it cleared. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. And one of the questions I often get from clients is that what's it like to work in Australia, and what do people talk about, and how would you describe that? What do your colleagues talk about at work? Is it all about the project, or is there, talk about other things?
um so it depends on you. For me, how it happened is I was having a bit of interest in knowing more about Australian geography. So it was very easy thing, from from coming outside of Australia. If you start people questioning about their place, their roots,
Yeah.
they will get comfortable and they will, start talking about it. And then suddenly you feel that oh, that's good, like you start feeling that belongingness in that place.
Yeah, so
So
asking questions is really important. I think Also, people like to feel like experts. So if you ask them about something they know, you know, it's, I often say to people, if you don't understand cricket or football, just ask people at work what happens here or what's the rule with this, because everyone loves to appear as the expert, and they look at you more kindly, I guess, because you've asked them the question and you've made them feel good about themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you say expert, I mean, uh, they won't tell you that they will be the only person who can tell you right thing. They will definitely, they have stopped. And this is a bit, sometimes, I've found a bit of difference back in India. Sometimes I've encountered people in my country, who also, seem to be very expert, but then they also sometimes used to give some extra information which doesn't used to be correct. And then here it used to be more like, they used to stop once they don't know, unless it's a completely different person itself, or he has been drinking for a while or something like that. Thing. But if you meet a normal person, then they sometimes, they start being an expert, but then they also tend to stop where
Yeah,
they want to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when I first met you, your English was exceptionally good and is so. You probably don't have anything to add here, but was there anything that you felt difficult about the Australian accent or vocabulary that you could share with listeners?
Absolutely. So when I went for my first session in Toastmasters, I didn't understand 80% of the things. I was just, understanding 20%. And then I was predicting, okay, that might be the thing. Okay. And, as I said, I didn't had that quality of questioning everything at that time. And that took a while once I started visiting the events. And that's why I'm, again and again I would focus on, going to those networking events. Why? Because there people, surely, people will be judging you, how you carry yourself and how everything is being done. But that's how the real world is, right? You cannot just predict to be, uh, for the people to be very nice always. That doesn't happen. They will, sometimes I used to encounter people who just having a conversation and suddenly they, flipped to other person, and then I felt like, oh, like, what should I do now? I started, I was having a glass of water in my hand and I don't know what to do.
Hmm.
So I would say that those things actually refine your personality.
Right.
You get to understand how to navigate in those circumstances. Everything cannot be taught to you. So coming from a country like India, everything has been spoon fed to us, which is, you know comfortable, a bit comfortable in saying. And if you had to just stay in that country, that's fine. But if you have chosen to come to this country, then forget about that. You won't be fed anything. Things won't be nice always. You have to face those challenges. You have to face people who might not come a bit, favorable. What you're expecting, they will be different. And, that's how the world is. There are people and they are different. So you need to learn how to, deal with
Sure.
them. That's it.
Yeah. And working outside of your comfort zone, I guess, whether it's cultural or language or whatever, is always very challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, and that's the challenge you have opted for once you made that decision that you are moving out of your country.
Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
it's on you.
Yeah. Now you're living in an AFL football state,
Yep.
one of the one of the states that we refer to. So that's usually Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania.
Yep.
Um, is football a discussion at work, or how have you been exposed to football at all living in Adelaide?
Always, always. So that's a bit question which definitely will struck me, because I used to work in Adelaide Oval. So I I was serving to the players. I was serving to the people who were coming there as spectators. So there was I got acquainted with that whole environment by working there itself.
First-hand experience. Yeah, that's
first-hand experience, yes.
yeah.
And yeah, and then I happened to shot a football match on camera for one of my presentations and one of
Right.
my reports back in uni. Yeah, so that was a good one.
Do you have a team?
Sorry.
Do you support a team?
No, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nah, like I couldn't able to. So I got an opportunity to go, go watch it in a corporate box once with one of my friends, and we saw it. The most rivalry match I would say between Port Adelaide and Adelaide
Yeah.
Crows,
Hmm.
and it was honestly, I the first thought which came to me after seeing that is like it's like football has married rugby.
Yeah.
It.
Very similar. Yeah. Just explain what a corporate box looks like.
Oh yeah, that was real interesting because at that time I got the essence of networking, how things happens. So honestly, the match was just a you know just a secondary thing. The primary thing which was happening in the boxes was networking. People are coming, their extended family members are coming, and
Hmm.
some deals were happening. Yeah, and it was really interesting to just see. Okay, uh, yeah, I mean, match was still there, but things were happening in behind the corner. So that really captured my eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to explain to the listeners that companies will often buy corporate boxes that they can use for meetings with clients or networking
No, no,
opportunities.
no, no.
No,
No, no, no. So
this is
that
not.
depends. That depends upon the size of the company. So this was just out of my friend's company's friend. So it
Okay.
was not an official thing. It was just outside work thing. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So large companies will do that, and what
Yeah.
they'll often do is that when they don't have clients to entertain, they'll just give the tickets to people in the company, and they can give them to their friends and so on. So
All right. Yeah.
a nice way to watch the football as well from a good vantage point.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That will be good.
Yeah. So just a little bit to go into the second part or winding up this conversation, a little bit about your industry. What's your job title, Anish?
So I'm working there as an estimation engineer. So estimation is basically cost planning of a project. So we
Right.
are deciding the budget and the initial things
So
before.
is that after the company has won the tender, or do you
No,
contribute to
before.
estimation
So
before?
this is happening before the tender.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And had you done that before you joined the company?
No. So to answer it more precisely, I have always hated this role. And I was always trying to avoid this estimation role. That was the last thing in my mind to go for.
Right. So what is it that's difficult or not so appealing about estimation? Because I get a lot of civil engineers who, and that's their first job. So what is it that's different from like a project management or a civil site role?
So it's
Or what's
basically was
challenging, I guess? What's the tough part about it?
so it's more sort of becoming colorblind, to be honest, in these days. It's like so many of drawings which shows different outlines with different colors, and when you are working on one of those drawings for almost 7 hours, then you just forget which color is that because you're just your eyes stop differentiating between blue and red. So it's like, man, it
Right.
used to be so challenging just to sit for 7 hours. So for me, sitting and just working on the drawing became a bit challenging because I am a person who bit like to move around, see, interact with people. So what I initially thought was it you will just be a role where I will be thrown in a box with one computer and that's it.
So just to clarify that, the colors denote different meanings. They actually are color based. Is that correct?
Sorry.
When you're looking at drawings, the colors denote different things. They mean different
Yeah,
things.
yeah, and it.
So, so 10% of the male population are colorblind. And I've got two friends, one is an architect and one who's not in that area, but how do they accommodate people who can't see color or differentiate color?
That's a very good question. Oli. Sorry, I don't have
Yeah,
an answer,
that's
but yeah, I will ask this
yeah,
one.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly in that field. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, what's a rewarding aspect of your job, though? What do you like doing?
Um, Especially when I started this one, so it completely broke my biases about it, my in pre, my preconceived notions about it that I had to do this and that. And because I did my civil engineering, my bachelor's in civil engineering, so I studied estimation as one of the subject. So I had a bit of good idea how it is being done. But because when you do it in a practical manner, then it's a completely different from university. So when I started here, it started from just doing the calculations and that stuff, and then what I started liking about is knowing about the risk appetite of a company.
Right.
Then that, because I have studied project management, and risk appetite was always a point which always have interested me during my whole 2 years of uni at Adelaide. That aspect was quite rewarding once you get to know, and when you know that you're working on such a challenging and rewarding project, that just gives me a very good night's sleep. So yeah.
Yeah. Right. And what about upskilling? Have you had to learn new software, new processes? And if so, how does that happen in the company? Do you get training? Are you expected to do this yourself? Just tell us a little bit about your experience with upskilling.
Yeah. So about that, definitely we will be, and all big companies are using softwares, and that is a need in today's time. And so the thing about this is, if you just understand a basic concept from your degree, then what you are really doing is just knowing the new commands of which that software offers. And in your initial time, that is always being at least taught by one of your manager or one of your supervisors, whoever is assisting you. And after that, it completely comes at you how much you question them and how much you want to learn. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, this may sound like a trivial question, but it's something I get asked all the time. What
Yeah.
do you wear at work? What clothes?
So I love formals, to be honest, and my job is because it's based completely in office role. So I prefer to be neat and smart, and it might be a mix of smart casual and sometimes formals. So uh, because in Australia sometimes you there are some those days where you celebrate as a part of the human resource team, or they are organizing some things. So you might have to wear sometimes a bit of casual touch as well, but mostly formal and smart casual. Yeah.
What about a tie? Does anyone wear a tie at work?
No, not at
Yeah.
all.
So this is one of the things that ties are simply not worn anymore, I don't think, in very rare anyway.
Yeah.
But a lot of new people coming to Australia think that formal equals tie, but yeah, in most cases it doesn't. And do you belong to a professional body? Are you part of Engineers Australia?
Yes, so that I think that I would encourage everyone, because it's everywhere, even parts like in Darwin, there are these chapters, and it has helped me a lot in navigating to meeting those right people who came here as immigrants, and who were having the same set of struggles which I had,
Right.
and just meeting someone who is in the same boat just gives you a bit of, security when you are in a
Yeah.
different country.
Now, from memory, you did an internship during your studies, is that correct?
Yes.
So that's probably the most important thing anybody can do to make yourself more employable. Is there any other advice apart from doing that internship for somebody trying to break into the profession in Australia? Because a lot of people don't have experience overseas. They
Yeah.
come here, they do a master's or a bachelor,
Yeah.
and the first thing is they have no industry experience.
Correct.
What tips can you give for somebody in that situation?
Uh, I used to be in the same boat in my own country because in my own country, when I was doing my bachelor's, it was almost the same distance from Darwin to Adelaide, which is 3,000 kilometers. So I was
Mm,
doing back in southern part of India. And to give you a context, when you have born and raised in North India and you go to South India, so I wasn't speaking my mother tongue. I was speaking in English
right.
because it's a very diverse country. So I was already out of my comfort zone, and I was having a bit of more challenges just how to navigate to in the industry at that time in civil engineering, and I think that is also applicable here itself. So at that time, what I did is just randomly, going on LinkedIn, just seeing, making a list of companies. The first exercise, this can be a first exercise for every individual who arrives in Australia, starts doing their uni. Just make a Excel sheet, or make, just take a paper and just, start firstly knowing about the differences between subcontractor, contractor, consultant, who are the different other players who are associated in the supply chain industry. And then, what this activity will do is, once you start gaining insight about it, then you will start knowing about so and so companies are there. And then this will create a bit of interest in knowing about that company. So when people say me that, Anish, when you go to Australia, just start reading their local newspaper, and that will give you a bit of context how things work there. But when I came here, it didn't I didn't feel like to even touch the newspaper. It was that much difficult. Then at that time, how I reached to that stage that I picked the newspaper is, I started from my condition itself. I'm like, what I can really do. So one of the first day in my uni, my professor asked us to he gave us a homework where we had to make a list of companies and everything. And I remained stick to that list till my last day when I got the job. I was having that list, I was adding on companies and companies. When I had 10 or 12 set of companies, just after 1 month of my when I completed 1 month in Adelaide, I it started making a sense when I read the that same company's name which I was having in my list. That created a curiosity about knowing more, and this gradually led me to reading more about other companies in the newspaper, and then I started navigating the newspaper, and then this the chain moved on and on. So I started from that aspect itself.
That's excellent advice, and very unusual that you did that because most people don't. And I think that could be one of the reasons why you transitioned into employment so easily compared to many other people. A lot of people think that you do your degree, you create a resume, you give it to recruiters, and you wait. And what you've shown there is really your understanding of the industry and the players in the industry and the different levels in the industry. As you mentioned, contractors, subcontractors, consultants, and so on, government authorities. Is that anytime you have a conversation with a prospective employer, you have that knowledge. And that's really important because when companies say, I'm sorry, you need local experience, often what they're saying is that you don't really understand how the industry works here. And if you have that knowledge through your research and reading, you don't come across as somebody with no local experience or less so. So,
Exactly.
yeah, very
I mean,
commendable. And what made you do that? Because it's quite unusual. I don't meet many people in your position who've decided to do the industry reading as opposed to just thinking about who wants me for this job.
it just, I was, just because it all started through those two questions where, uh, a lot of people from United States started moving back to India, thinking that now there won't be any US dream anymore, which it used to be back in 1970s, where a lot of brain drain happened from our country. And then uh, they came back, and then they started settling in a lot better way. They got a good perspective of themselves, and everything started happening. And when I was coming to even Australia, people, every third person was saying it's getting a bit difficult to find a job there. And I'm like, you know okay, it's even hard to find a job in India. It's not that easy. So, like, what is the difficulty? But whenever I asked another question, that's it,
Right.
the answer I was getting the same. It's no, it's just a bit challenging to know, no, the people doesn't help. Or I'm like, there are, I think I cannot even count, there are at least 30 to 40 more people easily, which I still remember, which have helped me. So I would never give credit to myself to get where I have been. It's always the people who have helped me at some point and somewhere, and even people like yourself who have helped me when it was needed. So it's, but the first step which came from was from me, that I had to go out, I had
That's
to ask
right.
people, that's it.
Yeah. So you initiated all of that. No one's going to come to you and say, "Do you want help?" You
Definitely.
decided that you had to put yourself
Definitely.
in the ring, and then things happen. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it happened to that extent then, that I networked so rigorously, so much rigorously, because the internship, the job which I referred to you that I got in my uni, they laid me off.
Right.
So I got laid off, suddenly when I was back in my home country during holidays. I was just about to come to Adelaide from India, and it was just 3 days left for my holidays to over. And suddenly at 6 a.m. in the morning, because there's a 4 hours of difference in India and Adelaide, and then on my personal email, I got a mail that, thank you for your services, and we wish you luck for your future endeavors. And I'm like, what does that mean? And suddenly it's like, you don't get to understand what's happening. And then I rigorously networked to that extent that when I uh, interviewed for a government firm here, I already knew the head panel. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
That's
mean,
great. And that's good, a good example of being persistent and handling a negative situation
yeah,
like
exactly.
as well, because that's going to happen. It happens to everybody,
Exactly, yeah.
and you don't want it to happen, but it's unavoidable.
Exactly.
And it's your attitude and your positivity that will see you keep progressing in your career.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's really useful advice. I'm sure there are many people out there listening closely to what you're saying. Just to finish up,
Yeah.
is there anything anybody could do before they arrive in Australia? So many people listen to this podcast while they're still in their country of origin. Do you have any advice for them?
I would say just take a map of Australia and just try to compare it with your own country, and then just start from that point itself. How, what sort of things are in Australia which are not in India. Just get a bit of hold about geography of Australia, because if I would say, start researching about the companies from there itself, these things never interest you
Hmm.
in that last phase of time when you are packing for doing your visa stuff and everything. What really interests is knowing more about the place where you're going to arrive and comparing it with your home country. So just take a Google map, and it's readily available on your phone screen. Just see, just be curious. That's it.
Yeah, good advice. Excellent advice. So hopefully people will take that on board. And thank you, Anish, for your time today. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure what you've said will be very helpful for those either about to come or already here and are looking for work. So thanks for your time and good luck with your career.
Thanks a lot, Terry, for having me. Thank you.
OBP Australia provides guidance and support with job applications and approaching employers, industry awareness, interview coaching, and language and communication. You'll also be introduced to your professional peers already working in Australia, so you can get the lowdown on what's happening in your industry or profession. If you're looking for guidance and support to find your next job, email me at terry@obpaustralia.com.au. Let's talk.